Welcome to Stand Up. My name is Pete Dominic. I am very happy to have you here and pressing play on today's show. Shout out to Eric Anderson, who sent me a picture of himself listening to the show from his car. Nobody ever does that. I liked it, Eric. Thank you very much. Great to see you. You're looking great, and I'm very happy to have you and everyone listening today. I've got the great Allison Gill, Dr. Allison Gill, joining me on today's show. She, of course, is the host of the Daily Beans podcast. She is Mueller, she wrote on social media, very influential person, podcaster, commentator, pundit, everything. And I'm very excited to have her joining me. If you want to jump to that conversation, you can do that now. It begins at about 51 minutes into today's show. But first, I've got your headlines, and I've got a hell of a clip show. I really put together some great clips, a potpourri, a variety of very interesting, some inspiring, and hilarious clips. So sometimes I think it's worth listening to just for the clip show, much less the headlines that I've put together for you. Here is what I think is important from yesterday. The most impactful stories, nothing about P. Diddy or the Menendez brothers. Those are interesting and they matter, of course, but not so much to me and millions of people, which is how I editorially like to choose the stories that I pick. Of course, the tiny king, tyrant of ours, went to Saudi Arabia in his first international trip. Most presidents go to England or one of our top allies. He goes to the people who attacked us on 9/11. And he is also headed to United Arab Emirates and, of course, his new BFFs, Qatar. And he might actually head to the peace talks between Ukraine and Russia as well, in between heading to McDonald's and other places. We'll see if he could stay awake, that is. He announced that he was going to lift sanctions on Syria. So that was pretty big news yesterday. Lifting sanctions on Syria. He dangled a similar enticement to Iran during a speech in Saudi Arabia, offering himself up as a historic peacemaker and outlining a transactional vision of future cooperation in the Middle East based on commerce, not chaos. That's how Politico wrote it, at least. Trump also announced he would lift all sanctions on Syria to give them a chance at greatness, something he said the leaders of Turkey and Saudi Arabia had encouraged him to do. That is a huge development and could mean a lot for Syria that has been in a civil war for like 14 years. So I think that's actually not a terrible thing, and I think that any president probably would have done that at this point, but maybe I'm wrong. A judge backed the Tiny King's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act for deportations, so that's not great. A federal judge for the first time has backed Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, which is a war power that this asshole is used to deport Venezuelans he claims are part of a criminal gang, and pretty much anybody else he wants to. The district court judge is a Trump appointee. It's a woman named Stephanie Haynes. She's on the bench in Pennsylvania. She upheld Trump's March 14th proclamation declaring that Tren de Aragua is a violent gang based in Venezuela, is mounting an incursion into the United States. And so that's a big and important story and development. We're going to have the Supreme Court arguments this week on birthright citizenship that could change the future of federal courts and judges, individual judges, being able to prevent things from happening this way with these different injunctions that you're seeing, various injunctions all over the country. Big deal, very important story. We heard a lot about Joe Biden yesterday. Well, one, he's out on a press tour, which probably coincides with this book coming out. Democrats don't want Joe Biden out there, but Jake Tapper has a new book out, and it's basically about Joe Biden and everything that happened towards the end of his election. So it's getting a lot of attention. Got a great clip from J.L. Covan about that coming up. But one of the most important headlines coming out of the book, apparently, is that David Plouth, who was one of Kamala Harris's top advisors, blames the former president for the 2024 loss. And I think JL's reaction to it is like, no, I'll blame the American people who voted for Donald Trump. So interesting stories coming out of that new book, but I really wish we weren't talking about that. Obviously, with all that is happening, there's so much more important, and I'm going to move on and get to it right now. Yesterday, protesters disrupted the markup of a mega bill in Congress in the House Rayburn building, U.S. Capitol Police were forced to quickly arrest 25 people and remove several protesters who were in wheelchairs from the hearing room amid chants of no cuts to Medicaid and waste, fraud, and abuse my ass. The committee chair had to repeatedly pound his gavel, getting Brett Guthrie of Kentucky. He was saying, this disruption of congressional business is a violation of law. It is a criminal offense. But that didn't stop these protesters from disrupting the markup of this bill. And it's important. That's great. I applaud them. I support them. I'm rooting for them. And now I'm going to the next story. Well, let's see. Apparently, the tariffs so far have had little impact on prices, defying the grim forecasts that have been predicted. But, give it time. We'll see. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will. But prices climbed apparently at an unexpectedly slow pace last month, offering a boost to Trump, whose aggressive trade policies have sparked fears of resurgence in inflation. We'll see if that boost lasts. The Labor Department Tuesday reported that prices rose at an annual rate of 2.3%, which is the smallest increase since early 2021. And we're going to continue to see these economic indicators coming out. Some will be okay or surprisingly not as bad. And who knows what to believe at this point. We'll continue to have the conversation about it. A lot of people wanted the economy to just absolutely go in free fall, thinking it's the only thing that can stop Donald Trump from being reelected or from getting his otherwise horrific agenda, which seems to be based on George Orwell's 1984 that he never read, enacted in our country. All right, what else can I tell you? The chair of Tesla's board apparently made $198 million selling the company's stock as profits fell. Good for her. The Trump administration is apparently directing more FBI drug and gun stormtroopers toward immigration enforcement as it ramps up a crackdown across more than 24 cities in the coming days. So prepare to see more images and videos and help protect folks and make sure everybody knows their rights. That's something that I've been trying to signal and promote as much as possible. Israeli officers concluded that Gaza is on the brink of starvation. Who? Israeli officers. They're the ones that are saying Gaza is on the brink of starvation. New York Times had this piece yesterday. I wanted to mention Israel has for months maintained that its blockade on food and fuel to Gaza did not pose a major threat to civilian life. But in private, some senior Israeli officials have said that Palestinians in Gaza face widespread starvation unless aid deliveries are restored within weeks. Well, that is what humanitarian aid organizations have been saying for a very, very long time. And now Israeli military officers who monitor humanitarian conditions in Gaza have warned their commanders that unless the blockade is lifted quickly, many areas of the enclave are likely to run out of enough food to meet minimum daily nutritional needs. And they're not allowing new food to come in, is my understanding. In a related story, Israel bombarded Gaza in an attempt to kill one of Hamas's top remaining leaders. Mohammed Sinwar still is alive, apparently, and they're trying to kill him, and they'll do whatever it takes, obviously. What else can I tell you? Let's see. Border detentions and confusion over visas are deterring international visitors to the United States of America. We knew this was going to happen. Tourism way down already. It could cause the U.S. to lose $12.5 billion in tourist spending. That is real money to real small business owners and tourist locations, hotspots all over the country. So if you're seeing that in your town or wherever you live, I'd love to hear from you. If you know a business leader or business owner in your town or wherever you live that is hurting from any of this, we'd love to hear from them as well, because none of these are isolated incidents. But don't worry, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to the rescue. He said he's placing a hold on all Trump Justice Department nominees as he seeks answers on the administration's plan to accept a luxury jet from Qatar is to be used as Air Force One, which, by the way, if you read any of these stories coming out yesterday, it would take potentially hundreds of millions of dollars to retrofit that plane and to secure it. And it would take several years. It might take several years, meaning Trump would not ever ride on that plane as Air Force One. He would only ride on it as a private citizen, which he's got to know. I mean, he's getting it all retrofitted for Air Force One. How long does he think that's going to take? It's not like decaling your Mustang. I mean, They got to do all kinds of shit to that plane. I mean, really, they should probably take it apart, make sure it's not a Trojan horse. Anyway, that is such a grift and such a huge story that took a lot of our attention. Definitely not the most impactful one, but certainly, and not even the most corrupt thing he's done. Maybe the most audacious in the great wide open corrupt thing he's done, but there's so much more. Well, will the FDA ever be the same? The Food and Drug Administration on Tuesday announced it will begin the process of pulling prescription fluoride drops and tablets for children off the market. Supplements are usually given to kids at high risk for cavities, but RFK doesn't like fluoride. So, wow, read more about that. And now farmers need information on weather and climate. Fortunately, now they're going to get it. The Agriculture Department is going to restore information about climate change that was scrubbed from its website when President Trump took office, according to court documents filed on Monday and a lawsuit over the deletion. And so it's interesting to me how many times we see the word restore or restoring in news items about the first 100 days of this tyrant's regime, because they cut so many important jobs with blindfolds on that they're now restoring those jobs, realizing what they've done. Oh, we fired all of the people in charge of landing planes safely? Oh, maybe we should restore those jobs. Well, a story to keep an eye on. More than 100 of the employees were laid off at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health facility in Morgantown, West Virginia. They're about to have their jobs restored. The senator from West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito, said in a statement yesterday, so, oh, wow, another one. And Elon Musk will probably turn this offer down, but it would be amazing if he would debate the former Social Security Commissioner, Martin O'Malley, who has challenged the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, to publicly debate Musk this Monday over claims that the retirement program for America's seniors is rife with fraud. So we'll see if that happens. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be awesome. Our tiny king refused to allow the Associated Press, Reuters, and Bloomberg News on Air Force One for this very important high-stakes trip to the Middle East. The three biggest newswire services did not get to come right out of the authoritarian playbook, my friends. The fact that the AP, Reuters, and Bloomberg News are not on that plane is probably as big of a news story as any other from yesterday, and didn't get enough attention, and nothing gets enough attention if those three wire services aren't allowed to be part of the press pool wherever he goes. And finally, a Republican senator aligned with Trump, his name is Mike Lee. He fashions himself a libertarian in Utah, or at least he used to. He's introduced a new bill to criminalize pornography, warning against what he sees as a harmful impact on American society. Senator Mike Lee, along with Congresswoman Mary Mueller of Illinois, unveiled draft legislation they're calling the Interstate Obscenity Definition Act, which seeks to stop the production and dissemination of pornographic material and to empower prosecutors to act against it by redefining the notion of obscenity for the internet era. I mean, who would really support it? Like, I bet you even like in the closet Christian conservatives or the most religious, prude, anti-sex people, they're usually the most perverted and perverse, and often they are, not usually, I suppose. But who's supporting the anti-porn bill, I wonder? I want to learn more about the constituency for that. One more story. The use of psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, which I know many of you are connoisseurs of. I mean, surprisingly high percentage of stand-up listeners have used or are using shrooms. Well, the usage of them has significantly increased in the U.S. since just 2019, according to a new study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, Drawing on data from 5 national sources, researchers found sharp increases in both lifetime and recent use, especially among adults with symptoms of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain. Psilocybin, a naturally occurring hallucinogen found in certain species of mushrooms, has attracted growing scientific and public attention due to promising early studies suggesting it may help treat depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and substance use disorders. Although not currently approved by the FDA, psilocybin has entered clinical trials, has been decriminalized or legalized in parts of Oregon, Colorado, and several municipalities. And now you can get it in like a pill form. You can get it just about anywhere. So we'll see if the shifting legal landscape is going to raise questions about whether broader public use will be allowed, because it's certainly increasing, and what the public health consequences could be as well, because that matters, of course. Well, there you go. Those are the headlines that I've gathered for you here on today's episode of Stand Up. I pay attention to the news all day on days like this, and most days I stay pretty focused in. I punch out as well. I take hours, entire hours, and sometimes more than an entire hour off, although I probably glance at my phone to see if anything's breaking or not, if I'm being honest with you. And I get outside, and I did yesterday, and I pulled 10 ticks off of my dog. 10 ticks. It's crazy right now here in New York State and Rockland County. It's always been an issue, but that was a personal record. So be careful, stay safe, keep the lawn cut, keep the dog, an eye on the dog. If you can cut the dog's hair, I don't know if those collars work, but if you've got tick solutions that you know scientifically work and aren't harmful to the environment and the dog and the humans that love it, let me know, because nobody wants to get bit by a tick. Except my dog, apparently. So, yeah, a little worried about her. All right, moving on. Let's not talk about my dog and ticks, but let's get to the clip show that I've got for you. And I got some great ones today. Some very, very good clips, a plethora, a real variety. I think you're going to like them. Let's start with Scott Galloway. Most of you know who Scott Galloway is. Very popular commentator now. He's got some of the most popular podcasts out there. And he is a businessman and a commentator and an investor. He's arrogant. He's brash. Anyway, I almost hesitate to play him or to give him too much attention, because I have a lot of questions about his thoughts on several things. But, man, he's good at ranting. He's good at just talking straight ahead and making several good points in a short amount of time, which is, I think, why people like listening to him. One reason why they do, and they agree with a lot of what he says, too, and his indignation. The guy doesn't hold back, and I think he's genuine. So here he is. I thought this was a great 3 minutes almost of Scott Galloway talking about Trump's greatest grift in these first 100 days. You hear Kara Swisher's voice in this as well. Take it away, Galloway.
Trump administration will go down in history as the greatest grift in the history of our economy in terms of the amount of money stolen and the size of it over the shortest period. Just some data here. Trump-affiliated entities have made at least $300 million in trading fees. The Trump family's net worth has increased by $3 billion, or $1 billion a month since he took office. Just some timeline. The Trump coin launched on a Friday night under cover of dark with all the news about the inauguration. By 3 a.m. on Sunday, it was valued at more than $70 billion. And there were a small number of investors who made large investments on a Friday. Maybe they got a tip or something. They made tens, if not hundreds of millions. And then over the course of the next couple weeks, about 800,000 smaller investors lost billions. This market manipulation, this what would technically be called insider trading by the SEC, we'll never know, because on April 8th, Trump's deputy attorney general ordered the DOJ's crypto fraud investigation arm to disband. Trump posted on Truth Social, "This is a great time to buy Donald Trump media" at 9:37 a.m. Between 1 and 1:10 p.m., there was a huge increase in bullish zero-day S&P 500 call options. And then just 8 minutes later, Trump announced a 90-day pause on all of his tariffs, and the market soared almost 10%, one of the biggest one-day gains in history. So someone knew what was going on.
Of course they do. He calls them.
That's called insider trading. The market gained $4 trillion while Trump media closed up 23%, increased his net worth by $415 million. On April 23rd, Trump announced that the top holders of the the Trump coin would win an exclusive dinner with him, and the coin surged over 60%. Just 58 wallets made more than 10 million apiece, totaling approximately 1.1 billion in gains. Meanwhile, 800,000 wallets of mostly smaller holders have lost money on their Trump coin. And it gets worse. Now the kids went on it. World Liberty Financial, a crypto firm run by Trump's sons, Eric and Don Jr., and they are entitled to 75% of its revenue. And now it's being leveraged to facilitate pardons for criminals. Justin's son, a crypto billionaire, was under SEC investigation for securities fraud after investing $75 million in World Liberty Financial. Guess what, Kara? The SEC dismissed his case. This is what fucking infuriates me. I'm a realpolitik guy. I don't mind a little bit of corruption as long as it's good for all Americans. I don't mind a little bit of strong arming. But here's the problem, or the tragedy. If Trump brought half the competence, expertise, and elegance to governance as he does to grifting, the country would be in a much better place. We have a mob family running the country. That's the bad news. The worst thing is that Michael Corleone is managing the crime, and Fredo is managing the government. You are so good at stealing. Can you bring some of that elegance, that expertise to the government?
Yeah, there it is. That's Scott Galloway, and I thought it was good. Did you like that one? Hopefully. Here's another one that I like a lot. This is from our friend JL Covan, who went on YouTube to talk about Joe Biden and the look backward and the blame. I thought this was great. There's a little bit longer version, I think, of it. I thought I saw a longer version as well. But here's the 3-minute version of JL's commentary on this, which I think is top-notch as always. I agree with this.
So I'm seeing a lot of articles today and news stories about Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's new book, Original Sin, which is, needless to say, a fairly provocative title about an 82-year-old running for re-election, namely Joe Biden. But I think that the book is probably worthwhile reporting. I know some left-wing people like myself may say, I'm not reading that trash, or they're trashing Biden again. Hey, if a president was not fit to run and his administration was doing a lot more to cover it up, that is absolutely worthwhile reporting, regardless of how you feel about politicians or the Democratic Party. I'll probably end up reading it, but what I've noticed, my problem today is not so much the reporting, which is done by two reputable people. It's the coverage, which is, I've seen already multiple newspaper articles with the, here's how Joe Biden handed the presidency to Donald Trump. And it just seems we're never going to get out of this place where America doesn't have to accept responsibility for Donald Trump. This idea of, oh, if Joe Biden had just given it up earlier. Yeah, we love living in that world where America would have just fallen in love with Democrats if only it wasn't Joe Biden. Meanwhile, just a few years earlier, Joe Biden was the right race, gender, generation, and temperament to beat Donald Trump, and maybe no one else could. But in a few short years, they act like he's the only Democrat who could lose. And obviously we learned that's not the case. Kamala Harris lost. First of all, it wasn't Joe Biden running. I know it was a short turnaround, but his vice president ran. He didn't run. He stepped out. Would it have been better if he had stepped out a year earlier? Maybe, but we act now like it's gospel truth. Would it have been better if he had never run at all? Why don't we go back that far? Oh, wait, except then we might have lost in 2020. But Americans need to own this. Joe Biden didn't hand the presidency to Donald Trump, and that once again takes all responsibility away from the American voters, and it's sickening. Americans did this to America. Joe Biden didn't, regardless of what he should have done politically a year before. The vote was between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris was a lot younger than both men, and wiped the floor with Donald Trump in a debate, and was the sitting vice president, and that didn't matter to anybody. So this idea of Joe Biden handed it, no. The worst, most selfish group of voters in American history handed it to Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. Okay, have a good one.
Yeah, JL, good stuff. I agree with that. I think he's spot on as usual. I really like his commentary. I always love hearing what he's got to say. So I wanted to share that in today's clip show. And now this, the New York Times Supreme Court correspondent Adam Liptak, on occasion of Supreme Court Justice David Souter's death, revived a 2012 pre-Trump warning from former Justice David Souter, which I think is worthy of playing all, I don't know, I guess this is a minute and a half because, well, it is prescient.
What I worry about is that when problems are not addressed, people will not know who is responsible. And when the problems get bad enough, as they might do, for example, with another serious terrorist attack, as they might do with another financial meltdown, some one person will come forward and say, give me total power and I will solve this problem. That is how the Roman Republic fell. Augustus became emperor not because he arrested the Roman Senate. He became emperor because he promised that he would solve problems that were not being solved. If we know who is responsible, I have enough faith in the American people to demand performance from those responsible. If we don't know, we will stay away from the polls. We will not demand it. And the day will come when somebody will come forward and we and the government will in effect say, take the ball and run with it. Do what you have to do. That is the way democracy dies.
Indeed it is. Wow, that was from 2012. That day has come, David Souter, and you lived to see it. So sorry to have to say that, of course, but I also think it's important. Well, I think it makes sense now to play Fiona Hill, who worked in the Trump administration. She was a senior director for European and Russian affairs on the U.S. National Security Council during the first Trump presidency. And she sat down with the British media outlet, Matt Fry of Channel 4. And I thought this was interesting. She talked about the path we're on now. This is scary, and it doesn't mean we end there, but Fiona Hill certainly is on one end of ringing the alarm bells, as are a lot of people who are experts on history and what's happening right now. Take it away, scary British foreign policy expert.
Definitely on a path towards full-on state repression. There's no question about it.
You really think that?
Of course. I've thought this for an extraordinarily long time. This is why I was so outspoken before the election, including in conversations with you, and why so many other people were as well. I mean, there are many academics across the United States who have pointed out about the slippery slope to authoritarianism and autocracy that we're headed towards, making comparisons with other illiberal settings like Hungary and Turkey, for example. There's a whole host of articles being written now about competitive authoritarianism, but there's also a heck of a lot of people in this country who have experienced that directly, including, naturalized citizens, green card holders, who are now finding themselves also being persecuted, and many people who've and sought refuge in the United States who now find themselves being caught up in dragnets in immigration and, summarily dispatched to El Salvador and all kinds of jails, or frankly deported. So look, there are a lot of people who can see what's happening here, and many people are making, the comparisons with what happened in the 1930s and that slide away from what had been a pretty vibrant, society where people thought this can't happen here. And even the Chinese have started talking about a cultural revolution that's happening in the United States, not dissimilar from 1968 and the purges that the Chinese themselves undertook, in that kind of Maoist excess. So look, everybody is seeing what's happening here. It's just Americans themselves, I think, can't quite believe it.
Wow. That kind of lands pretty hard, pretty heavy when I heard it. Americans can't quite believe it. I think that's a fair assessment for many of us, and I think she makes a lot of good points, and I think it's scary, which is why we continue to stay engaged and to do whatever we can to stop it or change it or have some control over the direction of our country, of our kids' future, of our society. I'll get down off of my inspiring soapbox speech to introduce the next clip. That was powerful stuff from Fiona Hill. So Piers Morgan on his YouTube show had the Pope's brother on. It is real It is so worth listening to. His name is Lou. Brother Lou Prevost. He's a supporter of Trump, and he has posted some really crazy, batshit crazy things on the internet, probably on his Facebook page. I'm not sure exactly where. I mentioned and read some of them the other day on the podcast. But anyway, so he had Lou on, and this is just a little bit of what it sounded like on Monday's episode of Piers Morgan's show with Brother Lou, the Pope's brother, Lou Prevost.
This is the kind of stuff you would expect from a very pro-Trump MAGA supporter. Probably not what people are used to from the Pope's brother. So, two questions. Have you had anyone from the Vatican call you and say, you got to ease off the gas? And will you be changing your social media strategy going forward, Lewis?
Okay. No one has contacted me yet. I'm hoping that it doesn't get that far, but you never know as this stuff comes up. Because I have posted some pretty, sometimes I like to go stir the pot too. Like I feel some of the people on the other side do. They throw stuff out there. A lot like I think President Trump does. He says things just to stir the pot. Because it's fun to get into some of these debates with people sometimes from the other side. But no, like I said, going forward, I've realized now that I see some of this coming back at me, that I should probably tone it down. So I've backed off a lot of media, and I don't see myself really getting too much involved in that, at least. And especially until I've had a chance to actually talk with my brother and see what his mental, what he thinks. Has he felt any of it or heard any of it come back his way? But he knows I am who I am. He's well aware of my position. He knows I'm probably not going to change, and I don't think I will, other than to just, like you say, tone it down. Maybe that comment that says, Trump ought to be in jail or Trump ought to be hung, that I would normally go back to and at why. Do you think I'll just read it and smile and go, okay, I'm not gonna get into it with these people anymore. And for all I know now, going forward, that the name is out there and people, they might be trying to bait me to say something they can use to get at him. So. I think that's very, very true and very perceptive of you to think about that, Lewis. I'm sure people will be deliberately trying to wind you up, but you seem a pretty level-headed guy to me. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I like
level-headed. Oh, Piers, Sweet Lou is a batshit crazy conspiracy theorist who is one of those people posting about Nancy Pelosi's husband being secretly in a gay relationship with the guy who broke into his house and beat him with a hammer. I mean, level-headed. Sweet Lou, brother of the Pope. Definitely. I don't know if that was worth playing or not. That was just fun and terrifying. But you know who that guy is. I also just like listening to his psychology, but I just I need to get on there, and it's like a dopamine. He made it sound like commenting on Facebook was similar to being addicted to a drug. And guess what? It is. It absolutely must trigger the same part of your brain where you're like, I have to check right now and see if someone has commented, and I have to have an argument with this person on the internet before I go to sleep. All right, well, let's get to some of the elected Democrats that I've got for you on today's clip show. I think I grabbed 4 clips here. Here is first. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the hearing yesterday where they were marking up this bill on what it would mean to Medicaid cuts, how it would devastate local communities in her state of New York, but you might as well replace hospitals in any other state, their names, as she goes through this, because it is very powerful and meaningful, and I think that's why Republicans even have realized, we can't do this. This would be bad for our people, our supporters, our voters, and our economies.
This bill bans the people that they kick off of Medicaid from even buying their own insurance from the Affordable Care Act exchange. So once you are kicked off Medicaid, you then can't even buy your own health insurance. It increases costs for people who they deem eligible and who are low income and forces them to pay even more. And if you have a private insurer, don't worry, you're getting screwed over too, because your healthcare premiums are going to skyrocket from the disaster that is happening from this bill. We've done assessments, because if you live in a rural community, you're going to be hurt too. In New York 23, 25% of people are on Medicaid in this area of upstate New York. Westfield Memorial Hospital will be at risk of closure. UPMC Chautauqua is at risk of closure. Schuyler Hospital at risk of closure. California 23, where 46% of people are on Medicaid. Redlands Community Hospital at risk of closure if this passes. Victor Valley Global Medical Center, Loma Linda University Medical Center, all at risk of closure. Colorado 8, 24% of people in this community are on Medicaid, and Platte Valley Medical Center will be at risk of closure if these cuts pass. Who do you believe? The people who are trying to cut this, not, by the way, to cut from quote unquote undeserving people to give to deserving people, but they are cutting these Medicaid care and these Medicaid dollars to pay for tax cuts for Elon Musk and billionaires. So this money isn't even going towards funding better care for people who are eligible. This money is going, and we are cutting money and healthcare from people and families who are suffering to pay for tax cuts for the rich. It is a crime happening in front of the American public right now.
Wow, powerful and important. Share it with your friends. There you go. Another good reason to listen to the Clip Show and stand up. Hearing clips like that are important. They matter, and they are informative and terrifying, but also very motivating in my mind as well for a lot of reasons. All right, now let's go to Elizabeth Warren. She was on a podcast with, I don't know who it was, but I wanted to grab this clip.
When Donald Trump says that this plane is free, I just want to know, what do the Qataris think they're getting for this? What's the trade deal they want? What's the weapons deal they want? What's the prosecution that they want released and eased up on? There's nothing that's coming free to the President of the United States at that level that doesn't come with an expectation there's going to be something in return. The hard part is the American people may not see what it was until it's way too late.
Exactly. Something similar to what we heard Justice Souter say earlier. And now let's go to one of our favorite senators. It's Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut on the Senate floor. I thought this was real powerful, real important, and wanted to share it with you.
The White House is open for business, and the Trump family is proudly advertising to the world where to send the check. They aren't trying to hide it. A $400 million luxury plane gifted to the President of the United States, right as he is going over to negotiate potentially sensitive security arrangements with the Gulf countries. Every American, every Republican, every supposed national security advocate in the Senate should be outraged by this. We could look the other way, or we could join together, Republicans and Democrats, to stand up for this country and do something about it. I've joined with Senators Schatz and Coons and Booker to introduce a resolution condemning the acceptance of the plane. It's a blatant violation of the Emoluments Clause. We could stand together as a Senate to vote for that resolution. I've introduced legislation to make it illegal for presidents or members of Congress and their family members to profit off of crypto coins while they hold federal office. We could join together in that effort. I will personally seek to block any arms sale that is announced as part of this trip with a country that is personally investing in Donald Trump and his family. I will force a full Senate debate and a vote on these sales. Foreign leaders need to know that there will be a price for participating in the corruption of the American presidency. This level of corruption is so gross that even Trump's most hardened MAGA sycophants are turning against him. I didn't think I'd see the day, but people like Ben Shapiro and Laura Loomer, who fawn over Trump, can't believe he is so crass as to think that it's okay to accept planes as a gift in exchange for U.S. national security concessions. This isn't America first. This is not what he promised the American people. This is Trump first. He is willing to put our nation's security at risk, take unconstitutional bribes, just so he can fly himself and his Mar-a-Lago golf buddies around the world in gold-plated luxury planes gifted to him by foreign governments, all while at the same time he tells Americans that they should be okay buying fewer school supplies for their kids or fewer birthday presents for their grandchildren because he's driving prices up for non-billionaires in this country. All while at the same time, he's kicking 13 million people off of their health care. Trump lines his pockets. He corrupts our foreign policy to enrich himself while driving up prices and stealing health care from average Americans. It's a national security disaster, and it's a moral abomination.
Yeah. Yes. Well done, sir. Very well done. Loved it. Doesn't hold back. Says it exactly how it needs to be said. And on the Senate floor, I applaud that speech by Senator Chris Murphy on the Senate floor. I think that was yesterday. And now let's go to the House Minority Leader. It is Hakeem Jeffries.
Millions of people in this country are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. Can't afford housing, can't afford groceries, can't afford to pay their utility bills, can't afford child care, can't afford insurance. And Donald Trump is publicly defending accepting a $400 million flying palace from a close ally of Iran and Hamas? I mean, you can't make this stuff up, which is why even some of his closest MAGA sycophants have made clear this is a plane too far for them. Too far for them.
There you go. That was yesterday, Democrats' little press conference on Capitol Hill yesterday. And now I want to move on to Francis Collins. Francis Collins was the former head of the National Institutes of Health, and he is got a Ph.D., obviously a really smart, widely respected guy in the world of medicine, and he was sat down with Jeff Goldberg of The Atlantic at their forum and had this to say, which is a stark warning, an important one, from an important man about the potential consequences of not investing into American-done research.
It's the long-term consequence of losing a generation of young scientists. I'm talking a lot to people who are currently in Ph.D. programs or M.D. programs wanting to go into research. Fully a third of the people I talk to are actively exploring the possibility of leaving the United States, going to Europe. Germany is making quite a nice offer. So is France. So is the UK. Australia thinks this is their moment to bring on a whole lot of talent. This is the brain drain reversing its direction. We have depended so heavily on being the place that everybody wanted to come to do research, and they've many times stayed here and become part of our Nobel Prize-winning amazing leadership. And now we're driving those people away. And if we don't have that, that's our most important resource. What's going to happen?
Yes, indeed. Well said, Francis Collins, ringing the bells for the cuts on investments and NIH funding. Very, very important. Wow, that was a clip show. And I'm not even done because I still got jokes. We can't go through all that, hear all those things, and then not have some laughs. Also, great points always being made by stand-up comedians on TV, which is the easiest place to find and grab these clips. Of course, I'll take them from anywhere that you've got them. If you see something funny, piece of commentary, send it my way. I don't want to have to rely always on these guys. And yeah, they're mostly guys, except when one of the women like Desi Lydic is filling in over at The Daily Show. But all right, let's go to first. It's Colbert, CBS Late Show.
Just a gentle reminder. U.S. intelligence has determined that Mohammed bin Salman ordered the murder and dismemberment of Washington Post journalist and Saudi dissident Jamal Khashoggi. So here's how Trump talked about him.
I like him a lot. I like him too much. That's why we give so much, you know? Too much. I like you too much.
I like you too much. I tell you, you're like the son I never had. What's that? How many? The guy with the gums? God, that's depressing. Bring the nugget truck back.
It's been a full 24 hours, and yet the anti-open corruption spoil sports out there are still giving Trump a hard time about accepting a simple $400 million bribe jet from Qatar. Even the Fox and Friends are questioning it. Yesterday, one of the And Friends, Brian Kilmeade, asked White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt this surprisingly reasonable question.
Do you worry that if they give us something like this, they want something in return?
Absolutely not, because they know President Trump and they know he only works with the interests of the American public in mind.
That's absolutely right. No. That's absolutely right. I never think about Donald Trump. All I think about is the American public and how much they'd like to buy this Donald Trump only thinks about the American public t-shirts. Available. There you go. Folks, it's available on DonaldTrump.com for only 75 Donald Trump coins. Free shipping if you give me a jet. Limit 1 shirt per jet.
All right. Colbert, very funny last night on CBS. Let's head over to Comedy Central, The Daily Show, and in the anchor chair was Jordan Klepper.
You know what? Being an American president is hard. People criticize your policies. They nitpick your moral deficiencies. Every time you even suggest removing habeas corpus, people start whining. No, we need that. Boo-hoo. You know, sometimes you just want to go somewhere where people don't pick apart your flaws and they treat you like a king.
Overnight, President Trump touching down in Saudi Arabia, escorted by military jets, a lavish welcome for his first visit to the Middle East since his re-election.
The Saudi prince greeted him at the airport, and he got a horse escort into the Saudi palace.
What? A horse escort? I gotta say, when you hear that Trump got a horse escort, this is the best version of that story. But, I gotta tell you, Saudi Arabia, oh man, they went all out. It wasn't just the horse escort. They greeted Trump with a full brass band that was really trying their best, you know? And then it was time for Trump to walk down the famous purple carpet. And so he walked, and he walked, kept walking. You know, it feels like he could have stayed in the car for some. Oh, now he took an escalator. Great, we're done with. No, we're still walking. Yep, that's fine. It's a cool 108 degrees. This guy can handle it. You know, Trump's looking at the carpet, going, you know, these things fly here, right? Don't they show me a whole new world or some shit like that? But look, a horse guard and purple carpets, that might impress the average world leader. But Donald Trump is no average world leader. And Saudi Arabia knows how to cater to a man with such refined tastes.
Saudi Arabia had a McDonald's mobile truck come on site so that President Trump could have his favorite McDonald's.
Perfect. Oh, I gotta tell you, it is nice to see they got another use out of the horses once they were done with that escort. It's good to know. It's good.
All right, good stuff from Klepper at The Daily Show. And finally, it's Seth Meyers on Late Night with Seth Meyers on NBC.
If you don't mind, we're going to get to the news. President Trump tonight attended a Saudi state dinner. Okay, well, just so you know, it's going to be a lot of stuff you've never tried, like kabsa and mandi and forks. President Trump said yesterday he's considering joining Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky in Turkey on Thursday for peace talks, and added, quote, "I was thinking about flying over." Oh, were you? Okay, I guess let us know. These are peace talks to prevent the escalation of a war in Europe, and you're treating it like it's your neighbor grilling. Oh, maybe I'll come by. You're not doing veggie burgers, are you? Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. shared photos on Sunday of himself and grandchildren swimming in a Washington creek that is contaminated with sewage and bacteria. I used to think it was crazy that he had a brain worm, but now I think it's crazy that he's only had one. In a statement released yesterday, the FAA said that as few as 3 air traffic controllers were scheduled to work last night at Newark Liberty Airport. On the plus side, nobody is working at Hudson News. Take all the trail mix and magazines you want. It's a free-for-all. During a press conference yesterday, President Trump said that he wants to, quote, equalize what Americans and Europeans pay for prescription drugs, and added that equalizing was a new word he came up with. Well, that's going to come as quite a surprise to Queen Latifah. Authorities in Pennsylvania recently arrested a woman after she allegedly stole more than $1,000 worth of candles from a CVS. On the bright side, her arrest was very romantic. A Massachusetts man was arrested recently after he allegedly drove 118 miles per hour on Interstate 93. In his defense, he had ordered a medium, but they gave him a large. Krispy Kreme has unveiled a collection of donuts to celebrate the 45th anniversary of the video game Pac-Man. And if you have enough of them, you'll become a ghost.
Yeah, there you go, Seth Meyers. And you heard from Jordan Klepper and, of course, Colbert earlier. That is the clip show that I've got for you, ending on the laughs. I hope you appreciated it and were inspired, entertained, informed. That's the whole idea of this first segment. And I put a lot into it. Cannot do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Thank you very, very much for your support. We need more. If you're a listener to this show and you are not a paid subscriber, I don't mean to hit you over the head, but we got to keep it going because it's the only way I can make this my full-time job, spending as many hours as I do every day producing the show, self-producing the show, booking, editing, posting, promoting, all of it. You have no idea what goes into it unless you do it yourself, and then you do, and even if you don't, you have some idea, I'm sure. So thank you very much for your paid subscriptions. If you haven't signed up, please do it now. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Other thing you can do is write a rating and a review of the podcast. Of course, you can follow me on Substack as well as YouTube, Blue Sky, Instagram, and all of the rest, because that matters as well. There's all kinds of things you can do to support your favorite independent journalists, creators, whatever people call themselves these days. And now it's time to bring one of them on the show. It's Allison Gill. Allison is very smart, very influential, very, very hardworking woman who actually owns a media company where she produces a whole bunch of podcasts, including several that she herself hosts or co-hosts, including The Daily Beans, which you can listen to pretty much every day. And she has Dana Goldberg co-hosting, which I love. I love Dana. She's been on the show before. Of course, you can follow Allison on social media everywhere at Mueller, She Wrote. You should support her on Substack. And I did this interview live on YouTube, so if you want to, you can watch it at youtube.com/standupwithpete. Let Allison know that you heard her on the show. She will see your posts on social media, Blue Sky and Twitter, and I will appreciate that a great deal. Let's do it right now with Dr. Allison Gill. We're live. You are live. It told me I'm live, and I'm alive and living.
Use my backdrop here.
Fix your backdrop. I want your backdrop to be half of a green curtain and then just like wood yellow in the back. Perfect.
With PBS in here, and we can even like bring the green.
And then just like
wow,
what just happened? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, now we're professional.
Oh, I like it. And also, I want you to always be sleeveless so we could see the tats, which tell a story. Have you ever told the story of them all somewhere?
No, I don't think I've told the story of all of them.
All right. Well, I'm not gonna go there, but someday I think you should. I think you should do like a special for like paid subscribers, like take them through your whole body that you feel appropriate sharing, or don't.
Your body is a wonderland, yeah.
Of ink, yeah. When was your first one? That's all I'll ask. Your first tattoo.
I was 16.
Oh wow, younger than my daughter. My daughter's about that age. She's getting, she's trying to catch up to you. I don't approve of it.
Oh, well, why would you? You're her dad. My parents didn't approve of mine either. So my mom likes him now, though. She's cool now. She's chill now.
I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for doing this with me. I've got a bunch of questions for you. I thought I could do like a kind of 100 days-ish with you, but there's just so much relevant stuff to ask you that happened yesterday. So I just want to ask you, though, I feel like the broader question is, and you've been covering this really good, is the grift, is the scam, is the corruption? I feel like you were the one who tweeted or posted about, you think this plane is a big deal. You know how much money he's made on like crypto and meme coins? I don't even understand all that stuff, but how sometimes people will say in defense of Donald Trump the first time and this time, and he just apparently announced he's giving up his $400,000 salary as president, and he's losing money by leaving his businesses and being president. Nothing could be further from the truth. How bad is it?
Well, we saw inklings of this way back, right? Like when he was first running for president, we checked out his real estate. We found out that 84% of real estate transactions done under Trump's name in Florida were with Russians. And then that moved into the inaugural where $50 million went missing and people were buying tickets through straw donations. One guy actually pled guilty and was exiled, deported, Mr. Vanderswan, who worked for Skadden Arps during the Mueller investigation for that particular behavior. And then we had something called Michael Cohen's Essential Consulting, which was a firm he set up, which was also a slush fund. People would give $500,000, $1 million, a lot of Russians, Blavatnik and stuff like that to get access to the president. And we had joked a lot about essential consulting. Can I swear on here?
Of course.
Essential consulting. It's fucking essential. That was our tagline. And we even had a little logo for it and everything. Then we got into the pardons at the end of his term, where he was basically selling pardons and getting cash that way from people who wanted to curry favor.
Remember when Clinton did that, or was accused of doing that with Mark Rich? It was like the biggest scandal of that era outside of all the rest of the scandals for Clinton. But certainly that was a big one. But yeah, nothing matters anymore.
And we knew that when he got into office again, if he did get into office again, and everybody warned about this, including Ketanji Brown Jackson during the immunity arguments, and Sonia Sotomayor too, saying that the White House will become the seat of criminality in this country if we give the president criminal immunity. People will run for office just so they can do crimes and not get in trouble for it. So now we've got any number of different ways, whether it's meme coin, whether it's a $5 million golden visa, whether it's, however he wants to sell stuff.
Dinner with him, right?
Mm-hmm. It's dinner. You can dine with him. It just costs you money. And now he's got the plane from Qatar, obviously signed off personally by the woman who, first of all, didn't go after him for Trump University after he made a $25,000 donation to her campaign. But Pam Bondi is now signing off on this Qatari plane after being a $115,000 a month paid agent for Qatar. She actually applied and registered with the Department of Justice under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So now we've got that, Hillary Clinton got in trouble for accepting a $425 necklace from Bangladesh, and she ended up giving it back. There's an old story where Benjamin Franklin got a snuff box from some foreign guy. He had to give that back. Jimmy Carter had to give up his peanut farm before he was going to be president. But now we've got a $400 million plane. And, that's aside from when Qatar bailed out Kushner's 666 Fifth Avenue building for him and his felonious father. And the Kushner, real estate group, and then he set up an investment fund and got $2 billion from the Saudis. So this is just all blatant corruption and plain as day out in the open. And I guess because they're not trying to hide it, I think somewhere in Trump's brain, he thinks, well, if the cover-up's worse than the crime and I'm not covering it up, it's not a crime. Like, I don't know.
Right.
If that's his thing, like, but here we are. And it's now, fortunately, the plane is like a tangible, fungible object, right? It's not like a weird meme coin,
right,
or NFT or something where a lot of folks just don't kind of grasp the amount of money that's being, flowing into the Trump organization coffers from like weird investments and, but like sneakers, $100,000 watches, and planes we can see, and that's bad news. And so here we are. And now Chuck Schumer is finally like, well, I'm not going to allow any of your DOJ appointments to go forward until we get Pam Bondi in here to answer some questions about this plane. And now why they haven't been blocking all the Trump administration appointees from the very beginning is beyond me. But I guess Chuck Schumer is hearing the cries and the calls of his own party and his own base saying, please just do something. And so I think he's finally standing up and is, now that he's got a fungible tangible plane to have an issue with.
Yeah, it's a little late and questionable as to why now. Well, let's talk about all of the issues around the tariffs. You cover this every day as well for your daily podcast, Daily Beans, and I know have a lot of thoughts on it. There's been, I think, pretty good framing from the mainstream corporate media, from the Wall Street Journal to Politico, right-leaning or corporate outlets that are easy to criticize when they frame or depict these tariffs, because nobody's winning, and now he's just caved to China. What do you make of the trade war that Trump seemed to be the only person that believed in it, and now where are we with it?
It's a fire that he set so he could put it out himself.
Right.
And he's not even very good at putting it out. I mean, the tariffs for China have come down to 80%, which is still 4 times what they were. Or 3 times, 25%, 80%. I mean, I even put a video out of the old, there's an old Countries of the World song by Yakko Warner on the Animaniacs. And I was like, I have it. I have the list of all of the countries that Trump has failed to make a trade deal with, and just sang the Countries of the World by Yakko Warner as they were in 1993. So awesome. It's a joke. It's ridiculous. And it only hurts, people with pensions and 401ks. And it also hurts us in the long run, because now, even if he gets back down to 10% tariffs across the board, which is still dumb, it's not considering any particular trade with any given country. It's just a flat tariff across the board. Even if he does get back down to that, we are now seen as risky business. It's volatile. It's not somewhere you want to invest. And so along the same lines of, travel, nobody wants to do business with the United States now because of the volatility.
Certainly not to Newark, travel-wise. Are you afraid to fly? You fly a lot.
I haven't really flown that much since the inauguration, because most of my travel had to do with visiting Democrats in power in D.C. Or touring around. So I don't really do much travel, but I'm pretty afraid to fly, and I'm also afraid to leave the country. I don't know if I'll be able to come back. So.
Let's talk about that issue: immigration, ports of entry, all the self-deportation. You covered a lot of these different cases. It's hard to keep track of who's been deported and why. I think before we get to some of the higher profile, I guess should be all high profile. You can talk about whatever ones you want. Young woman writes an essay critical of Israel, I guess, and she gets detained for months or for weeks. She was recently released. Meanwhile, the Trump is taking a plane from one of Hamas's funders. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition or comparison, those two right there. But what do you want to say about those who have been detained for issues regarding things they've said or written, much less people being asked about, what they think on the way into the country, thought crimes at the border?
Well, the problem here is a lack of due process, right? And this is, I wrote up a whole thread, I think on November 24th, right after the election, worried about people like you and me and, friends of ours. How will Trump try to detain us without due process? And one of my biggest concerns was, man, what if he suspends habeas corpus? And then we have Stephen Miller, Nosferatu, telling the press that the White House is considering suspending habeas corpus. But following the immigration cases, because if they take due process away from one person, they can take due process away from all of us. We've covered Rumeysa Öztürk, who you just mentioned.
Yes, that's her name. Yep.
Khalil Mahmoud. We've talked about Abrego Garcia and Andry Hernandez Romero and Frangel Reyes Mota. And they are representing the people who are being held in that torture prison in El Salvador without due process. And the ACLU has filed a case in Boasberg's court against the use of the Alien Enemies Act. Multiple judges, 3 have already considered the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act to be unlawful. And right now they're trying to establish a class in Judge Boasberg's court for what they call the Seacoast class. And those are all the people who are still wrongfully and unlawfully imprisoned in El Salvador. And Trump is trying to argue, well, we don't have any, they're a sovereign nation. We can't tell them what to do. Yet we flew a plane into a sovereign nation yesterday to pick up 49 white Africans to bring them back here. 59. So why can we do that to that sovereign nation, but not to El Salvador? Unless Trump is admitting he's a giant pussy and can't strong-arm Bukele in El Salvador to do what he wants. And he's even told the public, hey, I can make a phone call and have them back tomorrow, but I'm not going to do it, which has come back to bite him in the ass in a lot of these cases. And we're covering, Andy McCabe and I are covering those Alien Enemies Act cases on the Unjustified podcast in pretty good detail if you're interested.
Great place to learn more. That's a really good show with Allison and Andy McCabe. So let me ask you about all these injunctions. There's been a record amount of injunctions, courts deciding that the Trump administration has gone too far. They've got to stop, cease and desist. They can't do this thing. This week at the Supreme Court, they're going to hear a case on birthright citizenship. But more importantly, apparently it's going to have implication on whether or not lower courts can have injunctions, or whatever the word is, injunctions.
Nationwide injunctions.
Nationwide injunctions. I talked with the con law scholar, friend of the show, Eric Siegel, about that yesterday. I wonder what your read is, how important this is. He made it seem like a very, very possibly big deal. Do you agree?
I do. And I think that the Supreme Court is going to stop lower courts from being able to initiate nationwide injunctions. Yeah, because recently, you remember when Judge Boasberg ordered Trump to turn those planes around, and the Supreme Court came in and vacated those orders, right, and said you can't have a nationwide class of people that are subject to being disappeared under the Alien Enemies Act. Those people have to file individual habeas petitions in the jurisdictions where they're being detained, meaning we're going to make it so difficult now. Each and every individual who could be subject to deportation under this proclamation has to file their own habeas petition in their own jurisdiction, and each jurisdiction can issue a jurisdiction-wide injunction. And Colorado's done that. Western District of Texas has done that. Northern District of Texas has done that. But, they seem really big on making it have to happen for individuals in certain areas and not nationwide injunctions. And so I'm concerned that they'll have another rule of the ages like they did with immunity, saying that district court judges don't have the power to issue nationwide injunctions. They can only issue injunctions over the parties to the case or their little jurisdiction.
What does that mean in real terms, in real life, for all of these organizations that are doing great work, all these lawyers that are doing great work, bringing these suits that end up in injunctions? Does that not continue? Does it continue just pared down to just the plaintiffs in the case?
Well, it could mean that, for example, with the barring, with Trump trying to get rid of transgender troops in the military, at first there was a nationwide injunction, but then the court only issued the injunction for the 6 plaintiffs who filed. And then, of course, the circuit court, which had 2 Trump appointees on the 3-judge panel, blocked that from happening during the pendency of the litigation. But I think we could see, like, for example, when the probationary employees of the federal government were like, you have to stop firing all probationary employees. Stuff like that could end, being able to certify a class and to make those, those bans or injunctions nationwide, to say that this is unconstitutional for these people in the Southern District of Texas, but screw the rest of the country. It's going to be interesting to see how the Supreme Court meets that out, but I think that that's what they're going to do.
You've been following closely the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case, and I predicted he would be returned. I have not been right on anything I've ever predicted and have no credibility on such predictions, which is why people generally are right to come to the conclusion that the opposite of what I say is right. So what do you think? You've been covering it. It's delayed, that case. I feel like the reason I felt that way is because it just felt like the kind of case that would not be leaving the front pages until I guess it kind of did. But still,
yes.
the courts are.
Why did you think that he'd be returned? Because of what the Supreme Court ruled?
Yes, and I thought the politics of it were hurting him on an issue where he was so strong. It got so much attention, and public opinion seemed to turn against him just sending these people out without any kind of evidence or due process. So, yeah.
Trump likes attention, but let's go back to that Supreme Court ruling, 9-0, that they had to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. I wrote up a whole piece on it saying this isn't as good as everyone thinks it is. They've left giant loopholes for Trump to park a Cybertruck in. For example, they said, we don't like the word effectuate, but we say the lower court can direct the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return, and that the government should have to say what they've done to try. And basically what that allows is for Kristi Noem to get up and raise her right hand and say, I've done absolutely everything I can to get him back, and I can't. And that would satisfy the Supreme Court's ruling. Do you see what I'm saying? So at some point you run into a wall where, Judge Sines or these judges can be like, you have to tell us what you've done at least. And maybe at some point they will say what they've done. And in fact, in the Abrego Garcia case, I believe that there was a memo that said we called Bukele and he said no. So we tried, we facilitated, we did our job.
Right.
That's all we have to do, because the judge can't order Bukele to release them. And so I feel like we're going to run into a brick wall because of the Supreme Court's kind of vague ruling. And I don't think the Supreme Court will ever say to the Trump administration, you have to bring him back. They'll only say you have to do what you can. And if they raise their right hand and declare we've done what we can and we failed, that satisfies the court ruling.
Am I right to think that every time Trump signs an executive order, both he and much of the American public thinks he has just signed a law?
Yeah, I think people kind of confuse executive orders with laws. To be clear, Congress makes laws. And so executive orders are judiciable. They can be reviewed by the court. I know Trump thinks that they can't. But he's making stuff up so that he can do what he wants. And a lot of these things, he'll do what he wants. He'll shoot first and aim later, like with the taking people to El Salvador. He just quietly put them all on planes and sent them away, and then was like, oh, I can't do that? Oh, I already did.
But that's different with one of the other issues that you've been covering as well as anybody else with the federal workforce and firings, because you can't shoot now and what was the phrase,
aim later.
Aim later, because they're firing people who they then have to hire back. We've seen that, but that's one issue. The other, issue along those lines with executive orders, a couple days ago, he signed an executive order, I believe, to ban trans members of the military, which is just a terrible thing to do when you served in the military. The recruiting goals are never being met, and the standards have been lowered and lowered over the years. Like, you got a trans person who might be like the smartest, most effective person in their unit in whatever they're doing in the military, and now they're being kicked out. That's like millions of dollars of investment in that person lost. But on that executive order, I mean, you covered this, and I really don't know the answer. What is the status of people who are serving in the military who identify as trans?
Well, that's one of the things that, I was talking about with nationwide injunction versus just the 6 plaintiffs.
Yeah.
Was the transgender troop lawsuit. And there was an injunction entered by a judge that said these 6 people who are party to this lawsuit cannot be removed from the military. But the Court of Appeals, like I said, there were 2 Trump judges on that 3-judge panel. I think they'll file to have it reheard by the entire panel. But those judges paused that injunction while they waited for the merits of the case. So no court has actually determined whether or not it's, unlawful to kick transgender troops out of the military. But while we're waiting to see, the transgender troops wanted to stay in the military, but the Trump appointed judges on the Circuit Court of Appeals have paused that injunction from happening. So that's where we are with the status of that. Right now, they have to all get out of the military, which is weird because usually you want to preserve the status quo while you think about the merits of a case, but not in this particular instance, I guess.
What do you make of the resistance that you're seeing to the Trump administration? I was at Mike Lawler's town hall, almost got kicked out myself, interviewed the woman in my community who did. That's my district. I don't know if you knew that. But what do you make of the organized resistance, the resistance in general, and what do you make of elected Democrats at every level?
Let's start with the organized resistance. I think it's going great. I think JVL put out a great piece at the Bulwark about what we need to do, which is to organize and not just go to the rallies, but give everybody your email address so we have it on, so we can invite you to the next one and grow and grow and grow right. Until 2026, where we can all descend on DC in a big, massive group and basically dare Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act or something bizarre to say that to grant himself major emergency powers to be able to, I don't know, shoot protesters in the knees or whatever. But that I think is going well. The Tesla takedowns, the April 5th, the hands off, the No Kings. We have one coming up on June 14th, 50501 and Indivisible have been putting on great events. We've had empty chair town halls. You mentioned Mike Lawler's where they actually have people in the chairs at the town halls. They aren't going well for Republicans. So I think that we're on the right track there as long as we're actually organizing and using these groups to make contact with voters and future protesters. I think right. That's going swimmingly. Democratic leadership, there seems to be some stuff going on in the DNC where somebody wants to keep using a super PAC to run primary candidates against Democrats. And some people are being removed. And I'm just like, guys, open your window and look at the weather. Because right now there's like a storm right. outside. And to sit here and fight, we have a very simple, easy message. Tax the rich, eat the rich, fuck the rich. This is a class thing and it's working. You can see that that's where these Tesla rallies and the hands off and the No Kings come from and the Stop the Oligarchy tour with AOC and Bernie, for example. Those are the clear and obvious winning messages. And I don't understand why folks want to, bicker about things that don't matter. I don't know.
Well, you have your way into the DNC. You talk to those people. I hope they'll listen to you. I know a lot of other people do, whether it be on social media or on your several podcasts, your Substack. You're everywhere, and you're doing great work. I appreciate you stopping by here for a few minutes. I always love talking to you. Anything else that you want to plug or say as I wrap it up? Allison, thank you so much for joining me.
I'll just say go a little easy on the DNC. They're supposed to, and they're committed to staying out of the primary so the voters can actually decide who the candidates are. And then the DNC is like, after the voters decide who they want to run as their representatives, we'll push those. And that is the message that is at their core. And I think that's why they're having problems with people wanting to run and do these other things. But, but also at the same time, speak out against people who you feel could do more. I've been saying that to Chuck Schumer for a while. He seems to be starting to get the message. Cory Booker did that with his record-breaking speech on the floor. AOC, Max Frost, Jasmine Crockett. We see a lot of really great, the Newark mayor and the representatives in New Jersey. We see a lot of really good stuff happening. And I think we should focus on that and reward that and make that the focus instead of focusing on being mad about what's not happening, but always, always encourage your leadership to do more and to stand up as much as they can. I mean, we don't have a majority in any branch of the government, but we can always speak out.
Very well done and well said, and I appreciate you very much for joining me. Thanks for stopping by, Allison Gill. Go follow her on everything, and I will talk to you soon, Allison. Thank you. All right, Dr. Allison Gill. Go on social media right now and let her know that you heard her here on Blue Sky, on Twitter, and everywhere else. Go subscribe to her Substack, listen to her podcasts, Daily Beans, Clean Up on Aisle 45, and Unjustified with Allison Gill and Andrew McCabe. Check them all out. Support her. Support all of her work. And thank you for supporting mine. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. All right. That's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for listening today and every day that you can. Tell your friends. John Carroll writes and performs all of our music. Go support him. JohnCarroll.org. Buy his new album. And to you bumblebees who listened all the way to the end, I've got an Easter egg. I've got a little something special for you. Gareth Sever instant messaged me this on Instagram yesterday, and I'm going to share it again tomorrow probably. But to those of you who stayed all the way to the end, you bumblebees, I want to share this very special message from, I guess, a content creator or an Instagram woman named Tiffany Marie, Tiffany.jmarie. I don't know anything about her, but I thought this message was great, which is why I'm sure Gareth sent it to me. And I'm sure he wanted me to share it with you. So here it is, here at the end, just for the bumblebees.
I'm going to say something, and I need you to really, hear me and internalize this concept. Everything is made up. Modern society, we made up all of this. So, do what brings you joy and makes you happy. People like to throw out the regret thing a lot. They're like, oh, you're going to regret not having kids. You're going to regret not having a big wedding. You're going to regret not having flower girls. You're going to regret not going to see this thing or doing that thing or whatever. We made all this up. So all of these, regret threats are based on decisions that people who are now dead made. Did you know that having a white wedding dress wasn't actually a thing until, the 1800s? So now everybody thinks you have to have a white wedding dress. But that wasn't even a thing before then. And the whole concept of retirement was based on military personnel getting a pension after they served. So this idea that you have to be retired at 65 is based on decisions that dead people made. It's just so silly to me that we're sort of pushing this narrative that there's one path to happiness and everybody needs to follow this path because that is what sort of society has evolved based on previous decisions of previous regular people. And now they're like, well, you have to do this thing. Says who? Where do you get this idea that this is the thing? Genuinely pause and think, why do I think this is the thing that everybody needs to do? And why am I so hostile towards people not doing it? Do whatever you want. As long as you are not harming yourself, as long as you are not harming others, you can do whatever you want. Everything, this is all made up. You can just do anything.